Hola estudiantes y bienvenidos a Spanish 1. Yo soy el profesor Geoffrey Swaite y ustedes pueden me llamar de profe, so you can call me profe. This is lesson 1, and in lesson 1 we will be talking about the indicative or subject pronouns and about the three regular conjugations of Spanish verbs. Now, I will be delivering significant portions of this lecture in Spanish. So I'd like to just kind of address that with y'all first before we really get rolling. I do not want you to focus when I'm lecturing in Spanish on understanding what I'm saying. How could you? This is, after all, Spanish 1. You're here to learn how to do that. So any parts that I am delivering in Spanish, I will make sure that you can understand what's going on if you're looking at the whiteboard and taking diligent and assiduous notes. Okay? So don't worry about any flood of Spanish coming out of me. You've got this. You just follow along with the notes, and I'll make sure you have all the information you need. All right? So let's get this kicked off. Primero, first, I want to talk about los pronombres indicativos. Pronombres indicativos. Los pronombres indicativos. ¿Cómo se dice pronombre indicativo en inglés? En English. Pronombre indicativo en inglés es subject pronoun. So pronoun is here and subject is over there, but subject pronoun. Now, why do we call it a subject pronoun? Because these are the pronouns we use to talk about who the sentence is about, who the actor, who the agent in the sentence is. So, I run. That's a complete sentence. I run. I is the sort of pronoun we need. So, these pronouns in English are I, you, he, she, it, we, right? Because we say we run, not us run. Y'all, or yous guys, or you guys, or just plain old you, like you learned in your English grammars. And finally, they. Right? I, you, he, we, y'all, they. And what are the differences between these two sets of three? Well, these are singular, and these are plural. Okay. So now, let's make a note of these in Spanish. Muy bien. I, en español, es yo. Yo. You es tú. He es él. We es nosotros. Y'all es vosotros. Y they es ellos. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Ustedes deben memorizar eso. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Ustedes deben memorizar. ¿Cómo decir eso en inglés? Ustedes deben memorizar. You should memorize. Ustedes deben memorizar. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. So that you can do it without thinking. All right, so these are the indicative pronouns or subject pronouns. These are going to be the actors in the sentence. I, you, he, she, it, we, y'all, they. Ahora, en español tenemos masculino y femenino. ¿Cómo se dice masculino en inglés? Masculine. ¿Cómo se dice femenino en inglés? Feminine. Entonces, él ¿es masculino o femenino? Él es masculino. He. El femenino es ella. Él o ella. Pero también tenemos femenino aquí. We have feminine here. They is neuter in English. But when we say they in Spanish, we have to choose either the masculine or feminine as is appropriate. Entonces, ellos es masculino y ellas es femenino. If you're wondering why my whiteboard is so low, it is because I am actually 6'9", 2 meters, 5 centimeters. All right, so ellos and ellas. Masculino, femenino. Muy bien. Okay, entonces, memorizar. Now I'll make a note about the masculine and the feminine. A group of all guys is easy enough to realize, hey, that's masculine. A group of male dogs is masculine. A group of dogs generally will be masculine because that noun is masculine as well. Perros, masculino, perro. Now, if it's a group of all girls, it's feminine. If it's a group of all bicycles, it's feminine because bicicleta, ending in A, is feminine. But if there is one male, in a group of things that has gender, so people, animals, in a group of things that has gender, if there's one male, the whole group becomes male. So if you see 5 people walking down the street and there's just one male with them, that is ellos. All right, so the group has to be purely feminine to use the feminine. All right, muy bien. Very well, very good. Muy bien. We have our subject pronouns. This, pardon me, is taken from chapter 1 of your book. I hope you're ready for me to erase it. If you're not, you should pause the video. I didn't give you guys much time to pause. Good thing there's a rewind button. You guys probably don't even know what a rewind button is. Okay. Those were the pronombres. I, you, he, we, y'all, they. Now we're going to talk about verbs. Now, to make a complete sentence, those are all the ingredients you need, right? I run, we bake. Later on, we can learn to say we bake cakes. But if we have a pronoun and we have a verb, we can already make some very basic sentences. Okay, so let's talk about these verbs. And this will be more in Spanish. ¿Listos? ¿Ready? ¿Listos? Adelante. Ok, muy bien. Vamos a hablar de verbos. ¿Qué es un verbo? Verbo. Un verbo es una palabra de acción. Un verbo es una palabra de acción. ¿Cómo se dice eso en inglés? ¿Cómo se dice eso en inglés, en English? Bueno, verbo, claro, es verb, ¿no? Verb. Palabra es word. De es of. Y acción, ¿qué es acción? ¿Cómo se dice acción en inglés? Action. ¿Ok? Un verbo es una palabra de acción, ¿no? Como correr, o como comer, o como beber, ¿sí? Y hablando en beber, salud. Un café buenísimo. Ok, verbos son palabras de acción. Hay 3 conjugaciones en español. Hay 3 conjugaciones en español. Primera conjugación. La primera conjugación. ¿Cómo se dice conjugación en inglés? Conjugation. Primera conjugación. La segunda conjugación. Y la tercera conjugación. 3 tipos de conjugación. ¿Cómo se dice eso en inglés? 3 tipos de conjugación. 3 types of conjugation. La primera, la segunda y la tercera. ¿Ok? Vamos a hablar, let us speak, vamos a hablar de la primera conjugación. ¿Listos? ¿Listos? Are you ready? ¿Listos? Primera conjugación. La primera conjugación termina con AR. AR. The first conjugation ends in AR. La primera conjugación termina con AR. Por ejemplo, for example, por ejemplo, hablar, caminar o comprar. Estos verbos terminan con AR. AR, AR, AR. ¿Ok? Lo que tenemos aquí, what we have here, lo que tenemos aquí son los infinitivos. Ay. Infinitivos. ¿Ok? Hablar, caminar y comprar son infinitivos. ¿Cómo se dice infinitivo en inglés? Bueno, es simple, es sencillo, es claro. ¿Cómo se dice infinitivo en inglés? Infinitive. Now, what is an infinitive? The infinitive you could think of as being the pure form of the verb. I know a lot of this will be review for you guys who are diligent in your studies of English grammar, or perhaps you've studied another language before. An infinitive is the simple base form of the verb. So hablar is to speak. Not just speak, not he speaks, which is conjugated, but to speak. To walk is caminar, and comprar is to buy. Okay, so these are the unconjugated forms of the verb. To speak is unconjugated, hablar is unconjugated. Esa es la primera conjugación, AR. I'm going to erase this now. Voy a borrar. I'm going to erase. So pause if you need to. Vamos a hablar de la segunda conjugación. La segunda conjugación, the second conjugation, la segunda conjugación termina con ER. ER. La segunda conjugación termina con ER. Muy bien. Verbos como comer, beber y comprender. ¿Ok? Verbos ER. Comer, beber, comprender. Ahora, comer. Comer es el infinitivo, ¿correcto? Comer es el infinitivo, no es conjugado. Comer en inglés es to eat. Now, we can't say I to eat. All right, that's wrong. We need to conjugate it. And believe it or not, in English, we do conjugate. It just looks a lot simpler. I eat. That's conjugated. And that's a sentence. Muy bien. La tercera conjugación. La tercera conjugación termina con IR. IR. Uy. IR. La tercera conjugación. Verbos como abrir o partir. ¿Cierto? Abrir o partir. To open. To leave. All right, like our verb to depart. Partir, to leave. Abrir, partir. Okay, la tercera conjugación. Now, it's important to note they're called primera, segunda, tercera, first, second, and third, because of how common they are. The first conjugation, la primera conjugación, es más común. It's more common. So there are a lot more AR verbs than any other kind of verb. And there are a good few ER verbs, and IR verbs are a lot less common. Now, when we have to deal with irregular verbs, which will be pretty soon, those you just have to memorize on their own. You can sometimes see the relationship they might have with this first, second, and third conjugations, but you're going to have to power through them and listen to us as we use them in class. You'll find that combining that, being diligent in memorizing and studying the irregular verbs, as well as hearing them used, you'll develop an ear for it. Okay, so I've laid out what the primera, segunda, and tercera conjugaciones are. Now let's actually look at some verbs, and we're going to learn how to conjugate into the present indicative. Hey, we're recording. How about that? Okay, muy bien. Very well. Tenemos aquí verbos de la primera conjugación, verbos de la segunda y verbos de la tercera. Estos verbos vienen de su libro. Estos verbos están en su libro. So, if you don't have your book with you right now, pause this, go get your book and a notebook and pen. Okay, muy bien. So on page 3 of your book, there is a much more comprehensive list of verbs than this one, but we're going to use the first few of this. And the reason I asked you to get your notebook is that you learn things so much better by writing down than by typing. Okay, so I actually want you to write these down. If you look up here, you will see that there are the meanings of the verbs written down right next to them. And I will go over it verbally now as well for these. So let's write down these 12 verbs and their meanings in English. Okay? Primero, bajar. Bajar en inglés es to go down. Bajar, to get down. To go down. Okay? And as I say it, I encourage you, as goofy feeling as it might be sitting by yourself in your house right now, or maybe with your little sister watching you, or worse, your older sister, say it after me. So I say bajar, and I encourage you to try to pronounce correctly. Now I will note, one of my little guidelines for pronunciation, and we'll talk about this in another class more thoroughly, but try to get your vowels right. Don't worry about your consonants so much. So for example, if you want to say bahar, that's fine. It really is fine. You'll get better. It actually might prove to be a barrier for you to try to say it exactly correctly all the time. So as long as you get the vowels correct in this phase of the game, we're good. So bajar in inglés es to get down. Cocinar. Cocinar in inglés es to cook. Cocinar es to cook. Comprar. Comprar en inglés es to buy. Comprar es to buy. Hopefully you're writing this down. Conversar. Conversar en inglés. Well, what do you think it is? It's a little Blues Clues moment. Or I can prompt you guys. Conversar. It's to talk, to have a conversation, to converse. Conversar es to converse, to talk. I wonder what the book says. To talk. Right. It's like to talk to each other, right? Because we have hablar, which is to talk, to speak. Muy bien. De la segunda conjugación. Beber es to drink. Beber es to drink. Comer. Comer en inglés es to eat. Comprender. Comprender is a verb, pardon, that a lot of you guys have probably heard, right? No comprendo. An excellent phrase to keep in your pocket. Comprender es to understand, to comprehend. Correr. Correr es to run. En la tercera conjugación, abrir. Abrir es to open. Abrir es to open. Compartir. Compartir is to share. And most words that start with com or con have to do with sharing something. Cubrir. Cubrir is to cover. So guess what discover is? Descubrir. Cubrir es to cover. Y finalmente, decidir es to decide. Muy bien. Tenemos los verbos. Ahora vamos a conjugar. ¿Sí? So now we're going to conjugate into the present indicative. I actually confess that I don't know what this tense is called in English. So I'm translating from Spanish when I say present indicative. But it's the normal present, okay? It's just that I run, you walk, that present, okay? Not present continuous. Not that I am running, but I run, okay? Bajar. Actually, let's do comprar. To buy. Ok. Vamos a estudiar cómo conjugar verbos AR, ER y IR. Vamos a estudiar cómo conjugar verbos AR, ER y IR. ¿Ok? Entonces, adelante, forward, adelante. Primero, los pronombres en rojo, no en negro, en rojo. Yo, tú, él. Eso es un E. E. Muy bien. Nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Okay, so if comprar is to buy, then when we're done with this, we'll be able to say, I buy, you buy, he buys, we buy, y'all buy, they buy. Okay? Now, in English, there's only one change in the present. That's with he buys. Right? You can't say he buy. There's only one change. All of the endings are going to change for Spanish. Okay? So here we go. Comprar. The first thing we are going to do, this is why they're called AR verbs. Pardon me. We're going to remove the AR, which will leave us with what is called a stem. And the stem is this, right? Comprar menos el AR. So we can actually write this down, since it's a regular word with a verb with no stem changes, all the way across here. Yo compro. Hopefully you guys are copying all this down. He said as he blocked the whiteboard. Okay, so now what we need to do is just add those endings. So let's do that. Yo compro. Tú compras. Él compra. Nosotros compramos. Vosotros compráis, with an accent. Ellos compran. Okay. So let's make sure that we're clear on what's happening here. Yo compro means I buy. Tú compras, you buy. Él compra, he buys. Nosotros compramos, we buy. Vosotros compráis, y'all buy. Ellos compran, they buy. Okay? If you need to be taking extra notes, be doing so, and you're welcome to pause the video at this point. In fact, I'm going to pause the video at this point and get some good throat clearing in there. Now, I have a couple of recommendations for you. You're going to have some memorization work this week, right? So some drilling. One of them, of course, is going to be that you're going to study the pronombres, and you'll be able to say without thinking about it, yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Yo, tú, él, nosotros, vosotros, ellos. Nice. Okay. Then, you need to memorize how to conjugate AR verbs. Now, if you're still kind of working on ER and IR verbs, which I'm going to go over in this lecture, but if you're still kind of working on those by next week, that's okay. But I expect you to have AR verbs down cold. And there are two ways you can do this. So the way I prefer to do it is that I like to memorize one verb of that conjugation, like comprar, I just memorize it. Compro, compras, compra. Compramos, comprais, compran. Compro, compras, compra. Compramos, comprais, compran. And then I do to any new AR verb I see the same thing that I did to comprar, or whatever verb you choose to use. Andar is a good one, because andar, which is another word for to walk, andar only has 3 letters, right? Once you get rid of this. So ando, andas, anda, andamos, andais, andan. And then you take that and you apply that to any AR verb that you wish. The other thing you can do, and this is why I put it in different colors, and Latin students tend to like this, because this is how most Latin students learn their conjugations. You remember the endings, and this is a totally valid way of doing it. Oasa, amos, ais, an. Oasa, amos, ais, an. Okay? And then you're faced with a new AR verb, and you just run through that list in your head. Oasa, amos, ais, an. And you put the correct one in. So either way you choose to do it, either by memorizing an example or memorizing the ends and knowing how to apply them, you're good to go. Okay, now, let's do a couple of these verbally, different verbs. Take a look at your book. We took the AR off of comprar and we're left with a stem, right? Compra. And then we said, yo compro, tú compras, él compra, nosotros compramos, vosotros compráis, ellos compran. Okay, we're going to do this verbally, and I'd like you to participate all alone at your kitchen table. Okay? So we're going to, if you take a look at the book, you'll see that the next AR verb is cocinar. Cocinar, to cook. Cocinar. I'm going to take off the AR, and it's going to be cocin, right? Cocinar. I take off the AR, it's cocin. That's my stem. So I'm going to run through and do the same thing verbally, and I'd like you guys to try to anticipate me. Okay? If you don't anticipate me, just repeat after me. Okay, so cocinar. I have the stem cocin. So how do I say I cook? Yo cocino. Yo cocino. Okay? You cook. Tú. Tú cocinas. Tú cocinas. He cooks. Él. Él cocina. Él cocina. Yo cocino. Tú cocinas. Él cocina. Let's do the plural ones now. We, y'all, they. Okay. We cook. It says we buy. We cook. We have that stem, right? Cocin. We took off the AR, so cocin. We cook. Nosotros cocinamos. Nosotros cocinamos. Vosotros, y'all. Y'all cook. Vosotros. Vosotros cocináis. Vosotros cocináis. Ellos, they cook. Ellos cocinan. Ellos cocinan. Okay, let's do another one. What's the next one in the book? Comprar. And we are going to spend more time on AR than the other ones. Whoa, hold on. Comprar. Yes, that's right. I skipped. All right, let's do bajar. Let's do bajar. That first one in your AR column. Bajar, to get down. So I'm going to take off the AR and I'm left with bah. Right? That's a weird stem. Bah. All right. It'll be a little easier with this written out here. I get down, you get down, he gets down. Solo en español. Yo. Yo bajo. Tú. Tú bajas. Él. Él baja. Nosotros. nosotros bajamos. Vosotros, vosotros bajáis. Ellos, ellos bajan. ¿Cierto? Muy bien. All right. So, if you haven't gotten some notes down, pause the video now. We're going to move on to the second conjugation. So the second conjugation ends in ERs. So what are we going to do to find the stem? We're just going to pop that ER off. And we're going to be left with beb. Okay? Now it's quite similar to the AR verb as we go across, but there are a couple of differences. So let's look at them now. First, I'm going to write down the stem. And you all can be doing the same. And above you in your notebook, above this in your notebook, should be what we did with the AR. So now we're doing it again for the ER, and you're going to be able to compare them by looking at the page in your notebook. Muy bien. So remembering that beber is to drink. I drink, yo bebo. Tú bebes, él bebe, nosotros bebemos, vosotros bebéis, ellos beben. ¡Wii! Okay? Muy similar. Muy parecido, muy similar, very similar. What's the difference? Are you spotting the difference? These are ER verbs. There are E's in here instead of A's, right? So, tú compras, but tú bebes. So, O es E, hemos A's en. Yo bebo, tú bebes, él bebe. Nosotros bebemos, vosotros bebéis, ellos beben. Okay. Now let's do the third conjugation, which leaves us with a stem of, and it's good that we're doing a couple of short verbs because a lot of students actually hesitate when they see a short verb. They feel like maybe it's not that simple, maybe they're messing something up, and you're not. What's abrir again? Abrir is to open. All right. So, the stem again. All right, now the IR verb and the ER verb, la segunda y la tercera conjugación, they are brothers, okay? They are very similar to each other. So yo abro, tú abres, él abre. Hold on a second. Yep, that's right, it's identical to the ER so far. Nosotros abrimos, vosotros abrís, ellos abren. So it's only in the nosotros and the vosotros that it changes. Yo abro, tú abres, él abre. Nosotros abrimos, vosotros abrís, ellos abren. Okay, let's do another IR verb. We'll do decidir. Decidir, which is in your book. Okay? So decidir, decid would be the stem. So yo decido, tú decides, él decide, nosotros decidimos, vosotros decidís, ellos deciden. Okay, so that's all the learning for you in this lecture. You learned the indicative pronouns, the subject pronouns, okay? And you're going to have that totally memorized by next week. You're also going to have an AR verb memorized or be able to conjugate any regular AR verb. Okay? And we have studied la primera, la segunda y la tercera conjugación. Ahora, I'll actually pause the video and put the tarea, the homework, the work you guys have to do, up on the whiteboard. Okay, so here is your tarea, your homework. Complete Spanish Grammar, the book we've just been looking at. I want you to do exercises 1.1 through 1.5. Okay, you can skip the rest of the chapter. Reading the instructions and the teaching that comes before those exercises. Okay? And work on remembering some of those verbs. I want you to spend time with the Language Lab flashcards for both Complete Spanish Grammar Chapter 1 and for the Easy Reader Chapters 1 and 2. The Language Lab is that thing I told you to download. It's also available on the web, McGraw-Hill Language Lab. You can find flashcards to work on that vocabulary. So, and I want you to use the flashcards so that we're all working on the same vocabulary, okay? I don't expect you to have all of them memorized. I want you to work diligently on them and then use that knowledge to write 10 simple sentences. And when I say simple, I mean simple. If you're feeling saucy and you want to try something a little more complicated, you're welcome to. But be careful, because all I'm requiring is sentences like, I love books. Okay? I eat bread. I live at home. Okay? So that means you're going to have to conjugate a regular verb and find an object, right? Like, I like books. Subject, verb, object. 10 sentences like that. Come prepared to share them during recitation. Thanks, y'all. That's been a lot to absorb all at once, but now we're going to know how to conjugate all regular verbs into the present, the first, second, and third conjugation. See you guys in the next recitation.